Today is Tuesday, October 4th, although some folks called and said, wait a minute, I thought you guys met on Mondays at 9 a.m., but this is a very important issue, and we wanted to make sure that we got this meeting scheduled. So thank you to Chairman Gallagher for allowing us to utilize his spot on Tuesday at 1 p.m. to hold this hearing on the upcoming tax lien certificate sale. Madam Clerk, call the roll, please.
Calling the roll, Mr. Harrison.
Here.
Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Brady.
Here.
Ms. Simon. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
We have a quorum, and I'd like the record to reflect that Mr. Miller and Ms. Conwell are in attendance.
Councilwoman Conwell, Councilman Miller, thank you for attending today. Item 3, public comment related to the agenda.
No, Mr. Chair, no one has signed in.
All right, the chair will make a motion to approve the minutes from May 31st meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. Item 5.
Resolution 2016-0185, authorizing a contract with Tax Ease Ohio as purchaser and servicer in the amount not to exceed $50 million for the sale of tax lien certificates.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Treasurer, would you come forward? Council members, in front of you, the council staff, along with myself, worked to put together questions that were previously sent over to the Treasury's office for them to kind of assess and develop some answers to. In front of you, you have those questions. What we would do, as we did yesterday in the Finance and Budget meeting, we will go through those questions one by one and allow for questions after the answer has been given on the questions read by Mr. Murray. If everyone's fine with that, we will proceed. Mr. Murray.
Thank you, Councilman Harrison, members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come to you today and talk about a new tax lien partnership that we are working on with our selected vendor. I just have a few brief opening remarks, and then we can certainly get into any questions that you may have. As you know, there's the ORC, actually code sections 5721.3 and 57 through 5721.43 provide authorization from the state of Ohio for county treasurers to embark in a tax lien certificate sale. I just have 3 points I'd like to go over, and we can walk through the questions as they are listed. I want to talk a little bit about the overview of the process that we followed to get us to this point. I want to say a few words about the tax seized the vendor. And then finally, I'd like to talk a little bit about some of the improvements that I think we've made on the administrative piece of this project, which should allow you to have some comfort as we move forward. So as you know, we start with our delinquent portfolio in the county, and the delinquent portfolio is a fluid number. So as we go through our year, the delinquent portfolio decreases as people come in and make payment arrangements. I want to stress to you that the individuals that are in the tax lien sale at this point, these are individuals that do not meet certain exclusion criteria that we've developed both internally. There's some things that there's some exclusions that are prescribed via the Ohio Revised Code, as well as we have some exclusions that, as a matter of process and in terms of community values and input of stakeholders, we've also reduced our tax lien sale portfolio because of those factors. So just to give you an example, before we embark on a tax lien sale, we pull out all taxpayers that have a tax balance less than $1,000. It just doesn't make sense for us to bear the expenses for the sale for those particular taxpayers, and we have other ways to try to reach out to them and collect. If there are delinquencies that are older than 5 years, those are also pulled out of the sale. Anyone that's in bankruptcy, those are pulled out of the sale. If you have a BOR decision, if you have an open BOR case, or you're on BOR appeal, those are also taken out. If you're on an active delinquent contract, you're not sold. Foreclosure, homestead, postal vacancies. So you can certainly understand this list While the delinquencies are what they are, the actual portfolio of what we are selling is much smaller than that. And at this point, the portfolio is about just under 3,000 parcels at this point. So after we have walked through the exclusions and we pulled out those parcels after we pulled out those parcels that are not going to be sold, we provide a list of the potential portfolio to our community partners. Even though as treasurer I have responsibility to collect taxes, this is really, the endeavor is so large, it really takes a partnership in order to do so. We work with the land bank, as you know, each individual municipality. There are a number of community stakeholders. I don't see any here at the moment, but there are a number of community stakeholders that we also work with. So we will send our portfolio, as it were, to each of these individual entities, as I said, including municipalities, the land bank, and some community stakeholders, and they also help us identify those parcels that we missed in our own scrub, if you will. So, just as an example, we sent the list of parcels to the municipalities, and actually, there's 59 different communities, and at this point, we've only received responses from 7 of those communities. So just to give you an example, South Euclid removed approximately 13% of their portfolio. Euclid removed 5%. Cleveland removed 32%. Cleveland Heights removed 39% of their portfolio. Bedford Heights removed 80%. Shaker Heights removed 21%, and Maple Heights removed 9%. Now, we've afforded that opportunity to the municipalities because, as you are probably aware of, there may be some parcels that are in discussion for development or some other type of project. So we give them the opportunity to pull those out, and we just take them out, pretty much without any scrutiny. We take the word of either the elected official or the CDC. And of course, we take a look to just to see if there's any extenuating circumstances. But in many cases, what they ask for to be removed, we take out. Once that list has been pruned, so to speak, we are required by Ohio Revised Code to send a pre-sale notice to all taxpayers that are eligible for a tax lien. So that's a piece of certified mail that we send, just outlining that if you are now eligible for a sale, if you have not, if you don't come in and make payment arrangements by a certain date, then you may be sold to a tax lien purchaser. In many cases, taxpayers will come in and get on delinquent contract arrangements, or they will pay in full. This is actually a very effective collection tool because obviously at that point the situation is rather dire. I want to emphasize this again. We are selling parcels that are approximately 2 to 3 years delinquent. So what that means is you have received at least 3 to 4 communiques from the Treasury each year. So you can see that it adds up after a while. So I'm fairly confident that the people that are in the portfolio are aware of their situation. And again, we're always emphasizing whenever we make an appearance in the community, on our website, with anyone that comes into the office, anyone that calls, we are here to work with you, but you need to come in. You need to come in and talk with us. While the pre-sale notices are going out, and by the way, again, that was 3,300 parcels are currently in the pre-sale notice, and then that represents about $29 million in delinquent taxes. Concurrently, while this is going on, the county, we administer a bid process to determine a partner. We went through 2 formal bids and 1 informal bid. which yielded the tax lien purchaser that you see on the agenda. Now, Dawn Hoosier is here from Taxis. She's here to answer any questions that you may have. But I just wanted to give you a few words about Taxis. I can tell you they have an excellent reputation in Ohio. I've talked to numerous treasurers that have worked with Taxis, and they are extremely satisfied and complimentary regarding their performance. They are in 35. They're working with currently 35 Ohio treasurers, not including Cuyahoga County. They have invested approximately $61 million in Ohio, which means they've purchased $61 million in value of parcels throughout the state, including Summit, Lake, and Montgomery counties. They are also actively purchasing parcels in 10 other states, including Texas, Kentucky, and Connecticut. As you will see, once you talk to Dawn, they are also willing to supplement whatever education efforts that we can devise as far as educating our citizens and our community partners and our municipal partners concerning tax lien practices. They've been very open with me as far as that is concerned. Dawn has said she'd make herself available at any time needed, so I'm going to take her on her word for that. As far as today's contract, I'm very proud that we've made some what I think are some significant improvements in the contract. And I can't take 100% credit for some of these additions. I did have some help from some of our community stakeholders, VAPAC, the Vacant and Abandoned Properties Action Council, and Legal Aid for some of these suggestions. I'm not gonna take total credit for them, but they are in the contracts. I just want to go over them very quickly. We now have the ability to extend a certificate purchase period at Taxis' request. So what that means is the certificate purchase period right now is 3 years. So the life of the certificate is 3 years. Upon request, we are now allowing Taxis to make, if they need to make payment arrangements with a taxpayer and it exceeds the 3-year period we've written into the contract, they can make the request and we can allow if that will keep a taxpayer in their home. We've also included a cure period in all payment plans. So essentially, taxpayers have approximately 14 days to make good on a payment as part of their payment plan with the purchaser. That was not in the contract before. We removed all the consent to judgment language in payment plans prior to foreclosure action. We also have now included a complete explanation of the opening balance in the payment plan. So that would include detailing the delinquent taxes owed, penalties and interests that have already accrued, servicing fees, and the Treasury administration fee that is prescribed by code. We have also ensured, and we have agreement for a clear delineation of the servicer on all correspondence. I think some of you may remember that some of the complaints that we've had in past tax sales is the taxpayer could not differentiate between the purchasing entity that bought the certificates and the entity that is servicing the certificate. We also made sure that all noticing to taxpayers will be done by email and first-class mail. And all initial servicing and foreclosure proceedings will be performed by the clerk of courts as opposed to another entity or a private attorney. At this point, I am finished with my opening remarks. I have Ms. Hoosier here to answer any specific questions about taxes, but I'm not ready to walk through the questions you've provided.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer, for the open remarks. Does anyone have any questions regarding the open remarks that Mr. Murray has made?
I do.
Ms. Caldwell.
Through the chair to Mr. Murray, in regards to the list that you read us, does that holding back things out of the tax sale, are any of the properties that are being withheld out of the tax lien sales rental property?
They could be. It's when we talk about scrubbing the portfolio for parcels, we're looking at both residential and commercial. So we don't make any distinction.
Okay, so you said the 2 to 3 year, basically the 2 to 3 year time span goes in the taxes. So I'm just thinking from the resident's perspective. If they're renting a property and they don't know that the owner is paying the taxes, they could be put out on the street. So I'm just wondering, moving forward, could we look at some of those and the ones that we're adding into the portfolio is making sure that those residents are being impacted in any way and being thrown out because they don't know that the owner is not paying their taxes. And if that is the case, then maybe we could set up something like, withholding, they're paying their rent and withholding that, like they do with the rent strikes. If you're not paying your, so I feel that, those are unsuspecting residents that don't know that the owner is not paying, they're just collecting rent for whatever. They're not doing no maintenance, they're not, so I would like us to look into that to really see who's renting the property and how that's impacting them, because we have low-income housing and mostly this side of the council, and it's affordable. We're the ones that have the most affordable income level housing, and they're being thrown on the streets. So I'd like us to look into that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mrs. Caldwell. Mr. Miller.
Mr. Chairman, Director, the 3,300 number, is that after the various communities that you've heard from so far have removed some?
That is after, yes, Councilman, that's after the scrubbing, that's after the munis and the community stakeholders and the land bank's input, as well as each day I'm open, taxpayers are coming in to make restitution on their payments. So that number is fluid, but the 3,300 is inclusive of what you just asked.
And Mr. Chairman, Director, are you expecting to hear from more communities yet, or have we kind of closed the door on that?
I've closed the door, but obviously if elected official gave me a call, I would certainly have to take that into consideration.
Okay, and could you say a little bit more about when you said we've eliminated the confusion between who's holding the lien and who's servicing the lien? Is there now just one point of contact?
For this particular vendor, there is one point of contact. Taxis is also the servicer of their liens. But for future contracts, we need to make sure that the distinction was being made in the communication that the purchaser provides to the taxpayer, but that wasn't necessarily in the contract in previous iterations.
And could you explain a little bit more about the bidding process? It sounds like you did 2 formal bids and you didn't get what you were looking for, and then
Correct.
You did an informal process. Were there any other competitors in this, or was Taxis the only company that responded?
Through 2 formal bids and 1 informal bid, we actually only received 2 responses. And so after doing our due diligence, we selected Taxis. But to your point, the market for our portfolio was not what I anticipated. The portfolio was actually in the marketplace since March. So,
And Mr. Chairman, Director, how many delinquent parcels do we have in total?
I can give you a total as of a certain date.
Okay,
So
good enough.
as of August 1st of this year, we were a little under 40,000
So,
parcels in total. Now
so
that's, okay, go ahead.
so this sale actually only covers a relatively small portion of them that meet some pretty stringent criteria for selection. Is that correct?
That is correct. And there are other collection methods that we can that we are employing, but in this particular case, for what's in front of you this afternoon, we're talking about less than 3,000 now. And you remember the goal is collecting the taxes. I'll use whatever vehicle is available to me legally, but the goal is collection. So if the portfolio drops to 2,000 between now and the date that, if this particular agreement is signed, if the portfolio drops to that, we still win.
Understood.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. President Brady.
Thank you, Ms. Murray. Do you know what a ballpark figure for about how many properties were held back by the communities and CDCs?
Yes. 3,800. Sorry. Nope. Sorry. Looked at the wrong column. 1,600. 1,600 properties out of the 59 communities. So, but the list I read, those were the only communities that responded.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Jones.
Does taxis add any percentage to if they come up with a payment plan with the debtor?
No, they did not, Councilman. The redemption price for the parcel can only be those things that are prescribed by law. So that's the delinquent taxes, penalties and interest, the negotiated interest rate, which in this case is 17%, which is lower than previous years. There is a noticing fee, which essentially allows for the taxis to notify the delinquent taxpayer that they are now working with them. And then there's a treasurer's administration fee which we are allowed to add. There's nothing else in the
Nothing in
redemption
excess
price.
of that 17%.
Nothing in excess of that 17.
Okay. Tell me, and you touched on it briefly, but the communication efforts that they make with the homeowner. You mentioned how they make a clear understanding of the difference between the server of the lien. What are their communication efforts? What do they do? Is it all by phone?
It's by phone and by, I'm assuming it's by phone, but primarily mail? Primarily mail. Come on.
Just state your name and where you're from for the record, please.
Yes, sir. Dawn Hoosier, Taxis, Ohio. Thank you for having me. We notify the property owners quarterly that we hold the lien on their property. Those quarterly notices begin about 30 days post-sale. The treasurer obviously sends a post-sale notice prior to that. So the property owner understands that we now hold that lien. We're primarily notifying for two reasons. First of all, obviously to let them know that we hold the lien, but also to provide an opportunity for them to contact us and get into a payment arrangement. And then one other thing I know that was mentioned in one of the questions that we try to point out in the noticing is that we want them to stay in the property. There's a big misnomer in tax lien sales that we have actually purchased the property. And so sometimes the property owners don't understand that we simply purchased a lien on the property, not the actual property. And so one of the things that we try to point out in that noticing is that we want them to remain in the property and to please contact us to work out payment arrangements. To follow up on that, we do also utilize some call campaigns. But that's primarily done when a property owner has already reached out to us and we have that contact information, and we're trying to follow up on a payment plan default or trying to follow up as to whether they want to work out the delinquency.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. I'm sure Don should just stand by your side as we get
should.
ready to go through these questions. So again, Councilman, before you have a list of questions that we have prepared for the principal and for Treasurer Murray. We've actually, Mr. Jones' question covered the first question, does tax ease add an additional percentage to the bill if debitors enter into a payment plan with them? And that answer is no, that they do not add any additional percent except for what is allowed by law in terms of the administrative fee for Treasurer's Office and the others you've stated. And so we will dive into question 2. So you have the question in front of you, Ms. Murray, right?
Yes.
And so you can read the question and then we will, you provide your answer, and then we will ask questions if there are any.
Okay. Question 2 is, once taxees buys the tax lien certificate from the county, what type of notice or communication efforts does taxees, I can't speak this morning, give me or do with the homeowner? Per the agreement, taxees will notify our record taxpayers of the sale within 60 days of the closing date, and then every 90 days afterward until the certificate is either redeemed. Payment plan has been established between the record taxpayer and the purchaser. A foreclosure notice has been filed, or 4 notices within that first year has been sent. Now, this is in addition to the prescribed RRC post-sale letter that comes from my office.
Can I say one other thing?
Yes.
Also, to speak to Ms. Conwell's question about renters, we also make sure that we provide notice to both the mailing address and the property address. So if there happens to be a renter in that property, then they will know that there's a delinquency that exists, and they'll be able to maybe contact that property owner and inquire as to the situation. And then one other thing that we do prior to filing any foreclosure, we send certified notices. So we don't just send a regular mail notice, which, by the way, when we send a regular mail notice, we send it with proof of mailing. So we have proof that we actually mailed it into the address that we sent it to, so we can, show that we did make a diligent, we made a diligent effort to notify people appropriately, as well as prior to foreclosure. We send that certified notice as another, substantial effort to get notice to the appropriate person.
Thank you. Ms. Hyman.
Thank you. I have a question about your success rate in avoiding a foreclosure sale, because that would be a success. So I don't know how you quantify that statistically with percentage-wise of what you do, but obviously that would be the goal, is not to foreclose, because that just ends up in the communities. Well, it costs you a lot of money, and I'm not sure the return's there. So tell me a little bit about
100%.
that.
It doesn't help anyone for us to file foreclosure. It creates a hurdle that's even higher than the one that was put in front of them to begin with. We have obviously out of pocket expenses. The lien to value on the property raises up. So currently in the state of Ohio, we have about 76% of our portfolio redeems prior to foreclosure. Of the 24% that we file action on, we typically only see about 2 to 5% of that actually go to sale. So what we're seeing is when we file the action, we have a lot of property owners that will respond and then want to enter into a forbearance agreement, which we do at that time. So we have a pretty high success rate. In regards to numbers, we have over 10,000 liens currently in the state of Ohio. We have only taken into inventory about 65 REO properties, and that was in the last 6 months. We have already sold 4 of those properties, and we start maintaining those properties as soon as we get the forfeiture order.
Are there times when nobody bids on these, I'm sure, at the foreclosure sale? So things are status quo. Do you then pursue private sale outside? I mean, what happens then?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So of the 65 that we've taken into inventory, we've already pre-sold 40 of those properties. We've closed on about 10 of those so far. In between the time that the forfeiture order is signed and the actual sale, we go ahead and secure the property and maintain it until it's sold to a private party. Many times it's a party within the community. What we find is that typically the neighbor or somebody on the street knows someone that's looking for a property, and that's our typical buyer. And from time to time, we also have investors. But when we work with investors, we're also cognizant of our role in the community and that we have to make sure that we have a viable property owner in that property once we sell it. So we will go to Mr. Murray's office and actually vet that investor with his office prior to selling to an investor as well.
And you have the requisite crews to take care of the maintenance on these properties that you may be stuck with.
Yes, we usually build those teams within the community. We find out who the go-to vendors are within your community, and we utilize them.
Yeah, so this is why the county's not capable really of handling all this, because we would have to hire out landscaping and painters and become its own business, perhaps as a landlord on a lot of properties if this happens. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Hyman. We can continue to question number 3.
Mr. Chair, Mayor.
Actually, we'll have Ms. Brown. She has a question.
You mentioned that you send 4 letters, and of the 4, how many are certified letters?
Our final notice is certified. The 2 notices that the treasurer sends are also certified, and then the regular mail notices that we send, we also send proof of mailing, which is basically stamped by the post office and shows proof that we sent it to the appropriate address.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Now, Mr. Murray, we can move to question 3.
Question 3, what type of communication does taxis provide to residents about their rights to continue occupying their property until the foreclosure action is complete? I believe Ms. Hoosier already addressed that, but that it's a standard part of your communication letter to the taxpayers to encourage them to stay in the home and work out payment arrangements.
Any additional questions on that point? Seeing none, we can move to question number 4.
Question 4, does the county provide municipalities a final list of tax lien certificates on parcels within each municipality? The answer is yes. I will provide a list of all parcels purchased to any municipality, community organization, or elected official upon request. Does the contract, Part A, does the contract require communication from taxis with municipalities when the following actions are taken? Number 1, purchase of liens within the municipality. The Treasury will provide that list to the municipality upon request. Item B, initiating a foreclosure action within the community. Yes, it does. You'll find that in Article 8, page 14 of the contract. When taxis knows a property has become vacant, the contract does not require that. But I imagine that, and Dawn could certainly speak to this, we will have established a relationship with the building and housing personnel within that community, and Dawn can certainly, while it's not part of the contract, Dawn can certainly make that communication known upon request.
Dawn, can you speak more to that point? Because I think that's an issue for some members.
Yes. So first and foremost, we always make ourselves available to the municipality. So if they find that a property has become abandoned and vacant and we hold a lien in inventory, then certainly that would warrant us expediting a foreclosure action or considering a donation to the land bank of the lien. And so at that point, whether we notice the vacancy or the municipality does, and we try to have some open communication with that municipality to find out sort of what they like to see as the ultimate resolution, whether they think it's a demo property or whether they think it could be ultimately be a viable property. And then we also underwrite that particular parcel ourselves. And then from there, we collectively come up with the resolution as to how to handle that particular tax lien.
Any questions from the committee? We continue to the last point.
Item D, does the contract require communication when taxis have taken ownership? I believe it does not. I believe it does not require it, but as Dawn has already mentioned, the goal is to develop a relationship with the housing community. The taxis will obviously be in communication with our department. We will know when they have taken ownership of a home, and we can certainly provide that communication to the municipalities.
The contract does speak to, however, our activities prior to filing the foreclosure. So we will be communicating with Chris's office, Mr. Murray's office, as to the parcels on which we foresee us filing actions on. At that point, he'll provide the contact information in those municipalities. We will reach out to them prior to filing any action and make sure that we understand any potential risks or any end-use projects that they may have with those particular parcels.
Question 5. What remedy does the county have in the event the vendor fails to live up to its commitments regarding collection practices? The county can exercise all of its rights per the agreement up to and including termination of the contract. In addition, the county can choose to not renew this particular contract after 12 months. Sure.
I'd also just like to mention that we have been in the tax lien industry in Ohio since 2010. We currently work with 35 counties. Generally, we sign agreements with counties to work for 3 years within their community. Within that time span, we've had multiple extensions signed. And I think this speaks to our reputation. We've never had a contract expire and then not be extended by that treasurer. In fact, in Delaware County, just south of here, we're set to be in a 10-year contract with them. Now they just signed their third extension with our company.
Thank you. Ms. Simon?
Do you have lawyers on staff to handle foreclosures, or do you contract out with local firms?
We both contract out with local firms and work with prosecuting attorneys' offices.
Thank you.
And that's at the discretion of the county. So we provide the option to the prosecuting attorney first, and then from there we'll go to our private attorney. In many cases, we utilize both depending on what amount of work the prosecuting attorney can take on.
Thank you. Item 6, Mr. Murray. And let me say this for item 6, and you and I have talked about this. One of the biggest concerns, and at least from some of the elected officials in Cleveland and other folks on this council who represent communities that are struggling already, and these tax lien certificate sales have done nothing but continue to ravish these communities even further. And partly because of the deterioration and abandonment of these properties and the lack of preservation work that has been done and an upkeep to make sure that they are in condition so one can purchase them and so they won't be moved to the demo list. And so item 6, and I'd like for Don and you, Ms. Murray, just to go into some further detail than you have on the other questions about your commitment to making sure that these properties are preserved well and they do not fall to that list of condemned structures and abandonment properties.
Okay. I will speak to the agreement as it is written, and Dawn can talk about their own property management efforts. Per the agreement, taxees must comply with all of each jurisdiction's laws regarding the condition of its properties. If taxees fail to comply with local requirements, the municipality can issue a maintenance notice, and taxees has 60 days to bring the property into compliance. In addition, the county may grant another 30 days to taxees if there are seasonal constraints upon their request, i.e. if there's snow on the roof, they may not be able to get to it until March, even though we've discovered it in January. And this has been, and I want to say this has been a part of this contract for at least the last 2 sales.
We see our position or our relationship with your county treasurer as one of being a partnership with your county. So we have 2 primary objectives in this agreement. The first is to help to rehabilitate a property owner. So if we can provide an opportunity for a property owner to get current on their taxes, pay their county treasurer the current taxes while paying us over time to dig themselves out of the hole, that's our number 1 priority. That's what we're going to try to, that's the resolution we're going to try to come to first and foremost. So we're going to provide the property owner every opportunity to do that first, as well as communicate to them that we want them to stay in that property over that time, and that we, even if we end up going into a foreclosure and end up acquiring the property, we will try to keep that property owner in that property as long as possible. And traditionally, instead of utilizing an eviction process, we typically will utilize the cash for keys process instead, because that hopefully creates an amicable resolution where they have some money to move on and they leave the property in good condition. Our second, I guess, best option beyond rehabilitating the property owner is to rehabilitate the property. So if we were not able to get the taxes paid and keep the property owner in it, then our next objective is to make sure that we maintain that property and we keep the property in a viable condition, and that we're able to transfer that property to a viable taxpayer. And so what we do to try to sort of mitigate the risk of blight and abandonment is first to try to keep the property owner in it. And secondly, as soon as the forfeiture order is signed, we start maintaining that property if there is not someone in that property, if it's vacant. And we secure it immediately. Something else I think that speaks to our track record is we have never had a citation for lack of maintenance on our properties. And so we are highly cognizant of that. And one other thing that we make sure that we try to be responsible about is that we pay the taxes. When we acquire the property, we pay the taxes on that property, and we maintain it. So I think one of the biggest, the toughest pieces of this is that we really don't have access to the property until we get that forfeiture order, so we're not able to go on the property. So if it does become vacant or abandoned prior to us getting to that forfeiture order, there may be some deterioration to that property. But we do put our eyes on those properties. Every 9 months, we drive to the property, we look at the property. We expedite foreclosures if something does become vacant or abandoned, because we understand if it sits through a winter and it's vacant and abandoned, the copper's gonna be gone. Somebody might end up holding up in it. It could end up crime-ridden. It could deteriorate values of the properties around it. And so we do everything we can to make sure that we maintain the viability of the property, as well as provide your property owners an opportunity to stay in it.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? And thank you for that, because that has been it's almost seemed counterproductive when we have these sales and then they turn into serious eyesores in communities and structures that are falling over. And then on one end, we have the county and other entities working to do just the opposite. And so we wanted to make sure that question was asked today, and that a detailed answer was given, so that not only this committee but the other members of council and our community stakeholders were comfortable knowing that, yes, on one end, we don't want to see this type of sale happen, but we understand that the need for this for our schools and other players around the county, that we must do this to collect the taxes. So I thank you for the answer. We touched briefly on item 7, how many parcels of taxis own in the state of Ohio. Just briefly, if you can just give us an answer to that, and then we can move on.
Tax liens, it is a moving number, but about 10,000 tax liens, only about 65 REO properties currently. And actually only 65 in our existence in Ohio have we taken into inventory.
Mr. Murray.
Question 8, has the county looked into the option of using delinquent tax anticipation notes and increased collection efforts in lieu of a tax lien sale? Yes and no. We are using other methods to increase our tax collection. We are working with firms, outside firms, to supplement our collection efforts via phone and letter campaign. In terms of DTANs, we have not done an extensive study on DTANs. I'm of course willing to talk about it if the situation is if we want to look at the situation seriously. I do have some concerns about it, but again, I'm willing to talk. I'm willing to talk about it at any time.
Ms. Simon.
Does the prosecutor's office help with the collection activity, or is that all internal to your department?
That's a great question. Thank you, Councilman Simon. I neglected to mention our legal team, who have just put together the contract. But yes, the prosecutor has a dedicated unit that provides the legal services to take a foreclosure case to judgment. I believe right now, well, each year we annually provide a list of newly delinquent properties to the prosecutor, but then they're also working with the land bank on the vacant and abandoned properties.
So the county itself, our department here is not sending, we might send out a couple letters, but when we really get serious about collection, then the prosecutor's office, foreclosure department, I see them here, thank you,
Yes.
Takes over with more aggressive collection.
Correct.
And then we may, if that, and then some of those properties might go to the this is before selling them.
Correct.
Right, so
Before
we do
selling the-
everything,
Before selling the lien, yes.
yes,
Yes.
okay.
Yes. The people that are in the portfolio have missed at least 2 years of payments. So that means you missed 2 bills. If you're newly delinquent, you receive a third billing. You've missed pre-sale notices, and the auditor. Sorry, the auditor. I'm dating myself. The fiscal officer has also advertises your parcel if it's delinquent. So you've missed quite a few chances at this point.
And it's true, the prosecutor's office just doesn't have the capability to, en masse, do what this company can do. Is that why, I know we need the money, get the money up front with these sales, but do we not have the capacity at the prosecutor's office to pursue the extent to which taxis can foreclose and collect? The capacity.
Well, the capacity is there. I believe what you're asking for in terms of resources. I mean, I'm sure we can always use more, but we're working within what's been allotted.
Okay. And capacity equivalent to resources, so not to denigrate capacity.
Thank you. Ms. Murrah, at this time, are you able to elaborate on any other collection efforts that we should anticipate that'll be happening soon?
Yes, we are, as I mentioned before, Councilman, we are working with outside collection firms, law firms, to help us with our collection efforts. As I mentioned before, there are some delinquency categories that due to our community commitment, we don't feel that we should sell them. So, an example of those would be delinquent balances that are under $1,000, postal vacancies, homestead cases, and parcels where the lien is actually greater than 40% of the total value of the parcel. In those cases, we're trying a different tool in the collection toolbox. We're using two law firms to help us collect on these particular taxpayers, primarily through letter and phone call campaigns. And we recently, I can't even give you at this point what the volume is just yet. I know specifically there's about 12,000 cases that have been referred to this particular firm.
Any questions from the committee? And it's good that we are exploring other options in order to collect on these balances, with the hope of eventually moving away from this type of practice. We can move on to item 9, list of questions.
Okay. Item 9. How many parcels were taken off the list because of a homestead exemption? A little over 1,075 were removed from the portfolio before we made it available for this project. Do we proactively ask individuals eligible for the homestead exemption to apply for the exemption before tax liens are sold? Actually, the homestead application process is handled by the county fiscal officer, but to my knowledge, every attempt is being made to make eligible taxpayers aware of the program. And if the taxpayer is sitting in front of us making payment arrangements and we are made aware that they could qualify, we encourage them to make sure that application gets on file, and we use that to help them with their valuation.
And also in your publications that you sent out, you also highlight that. as one of your
Everything.
points. Yep.
Every publication I can find, I'm using social media, letters. I mean, we've sent information blurbs to the municipalities, city council, county council, et cetera. So wherever I can get the message out. It's the key to tax collection is continually getting the message out that we really are here to work with you, and you really do not have to pay your entire delinquent balance in one fell swoop. That's the constant perception that I'm fighting. What recourse do individuals have if their tax lien is sold, but they are later determined to be eligible for the homestead exemption? If at this point the law does not preclude us from doing it, but I can tell you if I run across this situation, I'm going to pull the lien back because it shouldn't have been sold.
So if we find that once it is sold and that it is a homestead exemption, you're telling us that you will pull that lien back?
I will pull the lien back. I will make the tax lien purchaser whole, and then we will pursue other collection arrangements.
Thank you. Anyone?
Yes.
I also like to say that that's common practice in all 35 counties that we work with. If we find that we've purchased a lien on someone that's homestead or disabled, their extenuating circumstances, we will too reach out to the treasurer and notify them of that situation and ask whether they'd like to refund us on those liens.
Good. We can move on.
Question 10, when will taxees provide a list of final tax liens that they will be buying? We expect to have the final list by the closing date, which in this case would be as late as the 21st, but we are assuming that we're going to have their final selections before that date.
21st is out of this month?
Of October, 21st of October. It takes time to drive the portfolio and for the purchaser to perform their due diligence.
Just go back on a point, when we talked about the other collection efforts with the law firms, how will those law firms be compensated? Is it a percentage of what they collect? Is it an additional percent added on to that?
It's going to be based on what we collect. We'll take a percentage from what we collect. So there won't be additional, it will not be an additional fee added to the taxpayer.
Okay. All right, we can continue with the second half of question 10.
Will this list be provided before council approval? We actually have what is known as the Schedule A. That is the initial list that has been offered to the tax lien purchaser. We all are aware that this is it's a fluid list. So taxees has 3,300 parcels, approximately 3,300 parcels to choose from. They will do their due diligence. They will let us know the ones that they want, and then we will compare that with parcels that have either been redeemed, the delinquency has been paid off, or they're in payment arrangements. We'll distill that list, and then whatever is left will become the final list for taxees at the closing date. And that closing date list will be the basis for our wire transfer.
So no.
No.
Any questions from the committee? You cover the next part about how many do we expect to be sold, so we can move into the next part of the questions. Can we get a list of how many tax lien certificates are sold per taxing subdivision and the estimated revenue for each of those?
I can provide that list to you. Actually, Councilman, the Budget Commission provides a summary for me at the time of real property settlement, so you should have it by the end of the year.
Okay, and you'll make sure that council and staff gets a copy of that information.
Yes. Question 11, is there a way the county can connect homeowners whose tax liens are sold with foreclosure counseling and other services provided by ESOP, NHS? That's connect the homeowners whose liens are already sold. Okay. The answer is yes, that is a possibility, but I have to caution in this, the emphasis should really be in connecting the taxpayers before they are on the tax lien list, because once they are sold, by law, the payment arrangements have to be with the purchaser. So we can send someone to an NHS and they can, certainly help them with their own personal budgeting, but the payment arrangements have already been sold. That the ability to do that at that point has already been sold. So the key again is what can we do to interface with those particular taxpayers before they get in this situation.
And you're right. It's really about the work beforehand to try
Yes.
to
Yes.
mitigate these issues. Any questions for committee on this particular item? Ms. Simon, nothing.
Not this particular item. But I have a question when we're done.
We'll move to item 12,
Okay.
which is the last item on the list.
What communication has the Treasury Department had with community stakeholders? And second question is, what changes were made to the tax lien sales strategy based on the feedback the community stakeholders provided? Yes, the Treasury has continued to work with our interested community stakeholders. I do attend at least one particular stakeholders meeting. Either myself or my delinquency manager, we're there every week. We serve on the committees as well. In terms of the strategy, I will say that even though we didn't receive the responses, the breadth of responses that I would have liked, we did go through the formal bid process. So for any individual vendor that we're working with, they understand before we sat down that we wanted the certificate life to be 3 years. They understand that we expected an REO presence, management of properties. We expect you to be able to communicate effectively with the municipalities, providing provision of monthly reports, because there's a breadth of community stakeholders that need this information, as well as the municipalities. So the exercise of the bid process, I think, honed the selection somewhat. So I'm very proud of that. In terms of the consumer protections that I've delineated before, I can go through them again very, very quickly. But the ability to extend certificate purchase period at the purchaser's request, I think, is incredibly important. We all understand what happens if a homeowner loses their home. Then there are spillover effects within the community that we don't necessarily need to discuss here, but we all understand what that is. So the goal is to keep the homeowner in the home as much as possible. The last contract did not afford this opportunity. It is the discretion rests with me. If Dawn calls me and says she has a taxpayer who's getting to the end of the certificate purchase period, but they are making payment arrangements, can we extend? Well, now I have the ability to help that particular situation. The inclusion of a cure period in all payment plans, I think is vital. It allows the taxpayer time to make good on a payment if they've missed it for whatever reason. We've removed the consent to judgment language in all payment plans prior to foreclosure action. That was of particular interest to legal aid. We have also included a complete explanation of the opening balance of the payment plans that I've just discussed before. There was some confusion with taxpayers in the past. You know, what did this number mean? It was just was a blob on a piece of paper, and it didn't go into any specific details. I think we've got that taken care of. The noticing to taxpayers by email and first-class mail, that just that provides more comfort for me that the taxpayers understand and they know the situation that they're in and what they need to do in order to take care of this particular bill. And then finally, servicing and foreclosure proceedings. You know, while that may seem like some insider baseball, I think that's very important that the clerk of courts is handling it and we're not leaving it to the third-party purchaser to do so.
Thank you, Mr. Brady.
I'll take you back to the beginning of your comment. And you, I assume the organization that you were talking about is VAPAC?
Yes, it is.
I just don't want to get into this too far, but they've been around a while, you've been around a while, but how's this relationship, could you characterize this relationship over the recent, how it's changed or how it seems to be closer than it was not too long ago?
Okay, I appreciate that. I think it's a fine working partnership. I mean, I'm a contributing member. I don't consider myself a member of APAC, but I'm a contributor, i.e. the information that is being used to help influence public policy on their end comes from our office. So we provide any information that is needed by the municipality. We tend to go through VAPAC only because they've got established relationships with not only the municipalities, but also the CDCs, which is really where your intel on the ground really is. And so as of right now, I think we have a fine working relationship with them. I've constantly told them that I am, even if you don't hear me talking, I am listening to your concerns. I think we've incorporated some of the concerns that was in the study from, I think that was 2013 now, 2013, as well as we've incorporated some of the other recommendations that they suggested, including the use of outside counsel to supplement our efforts. So I would like to say at this point, the relationship is good. Mm-hmm. I think so. Oh, sure. Sure. I'm not now. I can't tell you who originated VAPAC, but VAPAC is a community organization made up of community development professionals, housing advocates, legal aid, and other interested parties, other interested community parties that essentially they charge themselves with the study of any actions that will affect community housing policy in general. Obviously, with what is involved in tax liens, this has been something of primary focus with them. But we talk about all manner of subjects germane to my office in terms of, you know, the size, what is our strategies for increasing tax collection. Sometimes I feel like I'm the man on the hot seat when I go to the VAPAC meeting, but that's part of the job. It's not a problem. But I'd like to say that they are anything that's related to community development and housing policy, anything that affects housing policy, they are interested. They usually are at the table or in the room. I don't see them.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the question, Mr. Murray, for the reply. Do we have any other questions from the committee at this time? Ms. Simon?
Thank you. Just quickly, Mr. Murray, have you talked with anybody at other counties in Ohio as to the performance and reputation of taxis as references?
Yes, I have. As I mentioned earlier that I was first introduced to taxis at the Ohio Treasurers Conference, and I don't want to say Dawn knows everyone in the room, but Dawn knows everyone in the room. So it's fairly obvious that working relationships have been established over a number of years. As part of the due diligence process, we talked to Summit and Montgomery counties, only because they are of, I don't want to say similar size, but they're closer to us than Delaware County. So to me, what's the importance for me is that I believe they have the capacity to handle the servicing end, which is where we've gotten into so many complaints from the community. But I have no reservations on whether or not they're going to be a good community partner. 35 county treasurers tells me a lot.
Thank you, Ms. Simon. Any other questions from the committee? Seeing none, what I'd like to do before we move forward on the vote for this particular resolution, we do have some folks who have signed in to make public comments. So, Madam Clerk, I would like to bring those folks up first, and then we'll move into the resolution matter itself. We can start with the first individual.
We have Councilman Marco Polensek.
Councilman, always a pleasure.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. President, members of the committee. I'm glad to be here today on behalf of my constituents. First of all, I want to officially say I want to thank the Chairman, Anthony Harrison, and Councilwoman Yvonne Conwell for their ongoing interest and concerns for the greater Collinwood and greater Glenville community. I come before you because of a concern that I have long maintained about the county's posture of selling these tax certificates. Each member who is here, you did not create the problem. This problem of tax delinquency was created long before you by leadership that did not address the growing concerns of this county, who were really remiss in missing in action from the standpoint of tax foreclosure. As I sit here in the front row and then find out that, or listen, there's 40,000 delinquent properties in Cuyahoga County, that number in itself is shocking to me. So I'm aware of where we're at today, but I'm also aware of the fact that we got here because this county was remiss, extremely remiss, in collecting property taxes. Previous county prosecutors did not have it on the radar screen, and some would argue that the present prosecutor does not have it on his radar screen. The leadership of this county, both from the standpoint of the auditor's office and of the county commissioners, did not have it on their radar screen. But I'm also aware that the previous county treasurer, Jim Rakakis, actually put this process on hold because he could see the devastating impact that it was having throughout the county by creating additional foreclosures. To the members of the committee here, just several weeks ago, I had a family just around the corner from me. As I was coming home, the sheriff's folks were there putting their items out on the tree lawn. 2 small children, great neighborhood, great street. Anyone knows where I live off of Nottingham Road, it's like the suburbs. But they fell on hard times. And Woods Cove, LLC, put them out of their home. And I got to tell you, I grew up in the streets of Cleveland. I was born in Glenville, raised in Collinwood. When I was a young man, I saw, unfortunately at times, a group of individuals, some had different names for them. There was a more common name for them was the Outfit, but they were in the loan-making business, okay? They only charged 15%. Woods Cove 18%. The mob didn't charge that much in the day. I mean, how do you expect families that fall on hard times to pay an additional 18%, now 17% on top of what they owe already? I cannot, for the life of me, understand, I'm the senior member of Cleveland City Council, why this county has not ramped up the prosecutor's office, has not ramped up the other sections to move in the historic process that we had, the normal foreclosure, what I call normal foreclosure process, where if someone doesn't pay and are given every opportunity to do so, that it then winds up for sheriff's sale. I don't understand why we're selling these tax liens to, and I don't know the company that is being recommended. I have no knowledge of them. But I can assure you that if they put someone out of a home in my neighborhood and that property is not maintained, they're going to get to know me real well. Because I'm going to be on them like white on rice. Because I experience every day as the senior member and as someone who has seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, what this tsunami of foreclosures has done to my community. It's just not the empty house, and I have to say this again to you. It's just not the empty house sitting there not paying property taxes. It's the family not there supporting the businesses, shopping to the stores in the neighborhood. It's the visibility of what happens to these properties when they become empty. Like this one around the corner from me, the families on either side are panic stricken. What's going to happen to this property? I think one of them is going over there to cut the grass, because that's the other issue. We've seen this process where these families have been put out. Nobody maintains the property. Then it falls upon the city of Cleveland, which has its own issues, I can assure you, to have to come in and maintain these properties. We have become, the city of Cleveland, the biggest grass cutter in Cuyahoga County. We cut more grass than anybody, because no one else is doing it. We're in the plywood business because we're boarding up houses more than anyone else. And every time we board one up, it's costing us $800 and plus. So I have seen this crush. I have seen the wave. And yet, in the 8th Ward that I represent, I have the least number of foreclosures and abandoned house, but I still have several hundred. You can go just west of my ward, toward Glenville, and it's just a multiplying effect, the number of abandoned properties. And so I'm here today. I sent you all a copy of a piece of correspondence that I had sent the county executive, Armin Budish. I've spoken to him, and I appreciate some of the innovative programs and actions that he's taken, and all of you, because you had a mess to clean up. I've never been over here before to say that, but you've had a mess to clean up, and I applaud each and every one of you for the actions that you've taken. All I'm saying is don't contribute to an already gigantic problem we have in the city of Cleveland. So what I would ask of you with this contract that you're about to vote on, I think every public official, especially those of us in Cleveland, I would ask that. I want a list of everything that goes to this company, on these tax sales. I want a list of them. And if they foreclose, I think there should be notification to the city as well of their foreclosure action, so we can maintain some type of process as it pertains to the maintenance of the property. I don't want to have to worry about grass not being cut. I don't want to have to worry about the house not being secured, because all it's doing is having a debilitating effect upon my community, which I wear on my sleeve. I have a passionate concern for my community in the city of Cleveland, and we've been through a lot. And I'm not happy with my county, with the fact that as Father Marty Polito from Holy Redeemer Church, who had one of his parishioners put out on the street, said to me, how can our own county be doing this to people? How can our own county be doing this to people? So I hope that whatever you fashion, we have to have the safeguards in it. We have to have some security for our community. But it goes back to my very, very basic premise, and to Ms. Simon. It all depends who you talk to. One says to me, well, yeah, the prosecutor's office is ramped up. Then another one says, no way, there's no way we can handle it because we let it got out of hand. Well, again, the question is, should the county be bringing on the appropriate staff people to process these in a conventional manner? So then, if someone at the end of the day doesn't pay their taxes, they go to the sheriff's sale process. And then ultimately, if no one bids on it, it goes, I believe your process now goes to the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. Am I correct, Mr. Chairman?
In some respects, yes.
Okay. And I just want to say this. Thank God for the Cuyahoga County Land Bank. Without that operation, I don't have to tell you what we'd be experiencing in the city of Cleveland. With dealing with the city of Cleveland's Building and Housing Department is not a treat. So what you folks have done, the Cuyahoga County Land Bank under the leadership of Gus Frangos has done a magnificent job of trying to abate these nuisances in our neighborhood, and I hope that support continues. But I'm just here advocating on behalf of my community and expressing my own frustration with this foreclosure problem and the fact that the county let this get out of hand. You folks didn't do it. I know you're trying to get a handle on it, but the question is, I would ask, is this the route to be going? Or should we at some point be trying to figure out internally, how do we ramp up? How do we bring on the needed staff? And how do we make this? Because I can tell you, the list right now that you have, I have delinquent properties in my ward that have been sitting there for ages and they're on no list. They're on no list. I mean, I don't understand this. It's like, I ask myself, is this the low-hanging fruit? Are these the ones that you think that the county thinks they can maybe sell or get something from? I've got junk all over my neighborhood, and I'm sure every councilman come in and say the same thing, where it's tens of thousands of dollars owed, and they never see a foreclosure list, which I can't understand for the life of me. So it'd be interesting to be looking, and I would say this though, for the staff to put together a list of all the delinquent properties in the city, and the dollar amount associated with them, and then to ask, when you look at those that are 200,000, why has there been no foreclosure action taken on this property? I can't understand that. You're going after, like this family around the corner, a husband and a wife and two little kids, boom, they get put out on the street. And then I got this other junk that never gets foreclosed on. I can't figure that one out. So I thank you for the opportunity. I hope you fashion this in a way where you have some accountability, where you can get a handle. I want to know what goes to tax, what is sold in my neighborhood. Because again, I want to be able to monitor if this company is as good as I'm hearing. And I do want to thank the treasurer because, I've been on his case, and he has provided me some information, and I put it on the front page, as the chairman knows, I did it on my front page of my newsletter. If you're having a problem paying your taxes, this is what you need to do. But you know what? We never got that until I, leaned on some people. There has to be more communication to our citizens. Citizens need to know what the process is. You have to understand this, and this is what I've come to realize. When people fall behind, they withdraw. They go into a cocoon. I've come to this I've dealt with enough of these. They get the notices, they think by ignoring them, somehow it's going to go away. And it's not going to go away. But their world is collapsing on them. Their financial world is imploding on them. And they might have other issues within their family unit as well. And because I've asked this so often, why did you, before you called me, why'd you wait so long? I just didn't know what to do. I had all these other issues. I was sick. I've had personal issues. I just didn't know what. I think you have to take that into consideration. We're dealing with families that are under great stress, more so now than ever before. So on that note, I want to thank you again for the opportunity to come before you. Any questions?
Thank you, Councilman Pinsley, for those comments. And some of those same comments I've echoed to other members of council. The principal from taxis, our county treasurer and staff, and we will make sure that and as stated by the treasurer and the principal, that they will make certain that a list is provided to all of council members, staff, and in the municipalities, elected officials in the particular areas of what properties will actually go on to be part of the final schedule that will be on that list of properties to be sold. In addition to that, they will also provide us a list of how many tax lien certificates are sold per taxing subdivision and the estimated revenue for each also. So that gives us another perspective of what we're looking at here as we move along in this process. And I also like to say that I believe that this Treasurer's Office has made great strides in stepping up the consumer protections in this particular deal that we had before us, and also has made adjustments based on the communications that have been back and forth between the other community stakeholders as we moved along through this process. Some of these protections and some of these adjustments were not seen in previous sales, but due to your commitment to this issue and others, along with myself as chair, that they have responded well and are making strides to move away from this practice that at least as the chairman of this committee is speaking, that we don't foresee this being our long-term solution for this process. We're working to do things such as seeking outside counsel to help with collection efforts and tax delinquent anticipation notes, et cetera, moving from this process. So I have heard from the principal and the treasurer their commitment to doing just that. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment?
Mr. Chair, no one else has signed in.
No one else has signed in. All right, committee, we will. Yes, Don, the principal, Tax Ease, Ohio.
Councilman Palencic, I'd like to just address a few of the issues that you brought to the table. I want to express that we understand that there's potential risk with conducting a tax lien sale. I believe the reason why we have success in so many of your municipalities is because we understand the potential risk and we do whatever we can to avoid those risks. So there are some activities that have happened in the past that I want to bring to your attention that I also want to speak to from a tax ease perspective and how we handle it. So, for instance, one of the major issues that arises through a tax lien sale is that many investors will purchase large portfolios knowing that they're never really going to address a percentage of that portfolio. So they go into it saying, look, I'll purchase $15 million worth of delinquency, but they know they're only going to collect on about 10 million of that delinquency, and the rest of it is probably going to be a loss risk for them. And so what happens in turn is those investors are very aggressive in their tactics to collect, and then once they've sort of hit a wall in terms of their investment commitment, they sit on those liens and they allow them to continue to encumber the properties. We do everything within our power to mitigate that risk factor. So for instance, if we know that we have made a bad decision on underwriting a particular parcel, we will cut our losses. So for instance, instead of filing a foreclosure on that property to force some sort of action, we'll release the lien or transfer that lien to the land bank. In addition to that, if we get to a judgment and we see that there's a substantial risk of taking that into inventory, at that point, we won't just sit in judgment. We won't sit there for years. We won't continue to encumber that property. We won't let it sit abandoned and vacant for a period of time, which ultimately deteriorates the value of that property and the value around it. At that point, we will walk away from that lien. We will release the lien, or again, transfer the land bank, or work with the community to find out what the best end use is for that property. I'd also like to say that I would love to create a relationship with you and make sure that we are doing everything within our power to maintain those properties appropriately. Where the real struggle is for us as a company is that many times a property will become abandoned before we have the ability to actually step in and maintain the property. So what we try to do is pull those people sort of out of the weeds, out of that sort of hiding that you're talking about, where they just feel like they have no options. We try to set the tone of our noticing and of our calls in a way that helps them understand that we want to work with them, that we do not want to file foreclosure on their property, that we're not trying to add outrageous interest to the tax lien. As a matter of fact, when we enter into a payment plan, we try to make sure that we're entering into the shortest term possible to mitigate that cost effect. And I guess just lastly, I'd like to say we are open to any discussions with your community leaders that might help us to manage this portfolio appropriately and mitigate the risk of abandon and blight and people losing their homes. That's the last thing we want to see.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the comments. We have one last speaker for public comment. That is Colleen Majeski from the prosecutor's office.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Colleen Majeski from the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. Just want to address and clarify some of the issues that were brought up here, actually that were maybe incorrect. One is that we file about, on average, for the past 3 or 4 years, 2,250 foreclosures, tax foreclosures. 80% of those are dedicated to vacant, abandoned, blighted, crime-ridden properties. So we're not talking about a huge tax collection effort as what is going to bring in money to the DTAC funds, what the treasurer does. You're talking about the trash, or the trash to treasure program, where we're taking these type of properties that are going to go to the land banks. We sell maybe, so share of sale seems like, oh, we'll just take everything to sale and someone will buy it. Maybe 120 properties out of those go to sale and are purchased by somebody. The rest, 30% are being forfeited to the state of Ohio, which means nobody wanted them. We sell everything else that doesn't get sold goes to the land banks, not just the Cuyahoga County Land Bank, but the city of Cleveland for any type of vacant lot and the suburbs that are surrounding us. So the reason for an alternate collection tool, and I'm allowing the treasurer, they've made their point, they're vying for it, they're our clients, so I'm not going to speak too much on that and that decision and their vetting of the issue, but we're not used for that type of tax collection tool because we've been relegated in the prosecutor's office to do something quite different, which is elimination of blight in this county. We've been highly successful with that, but it doesn't bring in a lot of collection money. These aren't people who come in and pay and redeem. Maybe 20% are, so that's not a whole lot after that. And the other misconception or misstatement that was made recently is that we did ramp up our efforts. We have gotten hardest hit fund money that we're going to, not we have gotten the county land bank, and for that we are going to prosecute 2,000 more foreclosures than what we already do. So we've received money through that, of which we've hired. We're supposed to hire 10 additional staff. We started doing that. Most of those positions, except for 2, have been filled. And those were filled starting in June, and we hired 2 new attorneys. So we're up from 22 staff in the prosecutor's office to about 35 in a very small space, and we've also been moved to Courthouse Square because we were out in a hallway in the prosecutor's office. So there have been improvements that have been made. Specifically with Councilman Plenzik, he gave us a list, and I've given that to one of my staff. So one of the things we do is pair up a one-on-one relationship with staff and a council person, whether it be county council, city council, or just someone calling from a suburb, a CDC, and we'll give that person all the parcels that they've specifically requested. So we don't put them to the back of the pile when we have an expedited request. I actually give them to one of my staff, and they're required to come up with a spreadsheet and contact the person, whoever it is, twice a month and show them the spreadsheet and show them where the case is and what they've been doing. So there have been a lot of efforts. We have ramped up things that we need to do. And I just wanted to give you an idea of what we have been doing over in the prosecutor's office with the treasurer. But I think there's a mistake kind of on what we collect, because when we're dealing with these type of properties, it's more like cleaning up the blight and less collection. So sometimes these alternates that they're speaking of are highly necessary, at least for a small portion. And again, you look at the portions. I mean, we're collecting, and tax foreclosure are doing less than 10% of total delinquencies, and this portfolio is somewhat similar. So just kind of gives you a better idea of actually what the percentages are and what the facts and stats are.
Thank you. Well, thank you for clarifying some of those points and providing additional information. Thank you so much.
Do you have any questions?
Any questions for anyone? One. Ms. Simon.
So the new staff you're hiring will expand the pool of foreclosure homes or does there continue to be the priority for blight?
The priority is blight because it's hardest hit funds, so the whole purpose of that is those properties have to go from tax foreclosure to be transferred to the land bank. So the only way for the land bank to knock them down, and this is specifically the county land bank, is for them to take title, which the foreclosure process, one of the things it does is changes title. So then when they take title, they're going to knock all of those down. So it's still another 2,000 of blighted, kind of non-collectible, specific parcels that they've accumulated through a lot of research of what are the best to put through that process so they can be demolished by the county land bank.
So the funds are restricted for use?
Somewhat, yes. So the additional 2,000 is more restricted to specifically hardest hit funds.
The 35 lawyers you anticipate, is that
Not-
the full civil division or is that just foreclosure?
There's 8 attorneys and the rest are staff. So
Okay.
we got an additional 2 attorneys and 10 staff in addition. So the composition is 8 and then
Is that is that
27.
civil in general or foreclosure specific? The
I'm
lawyers.
sorry, can you repeat
Lawyers
that?
will only be working on these foreclosure cases, or are they gonna, they have other duties other than foreclosure?
1/3 of our work is contributed to bankruptcy, probate, appropriations, land use sales, contempt hearings. So when someone doesn't pay and finish the sale, for a sheriff sale, we do go over and represent the sheriff in contempt sales, federal court. So we do have other things that we contribute to in the office. And that's about 1/3 of our work. And the other 2/3 are just filing the foreclosures and attending the hearings in BOR and the judicial realm.
So, I'm sorry, Mr. 14 attorneys in the civil division, has that changed?
This is our specific division in
Specific.
tax foreclosure.
Okay.
So if that's what I was not
I-
understanding.
Yeah, okay. Got it.
Okay.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, the chair will accept a motion to move Resolution 2016-0185 to the full council.
I make a motion that we move the resolution to the full council. Any suspension needed?
Mr. Murray? Law, is there any, so, was there any comment about whether this needed to go for second reading
Full reading.
suspension? Or was it, the 3 readings would be fine?
We would like to expedite it as quickly as possible. So,
Under second reading suspension? If
Any discussion on the motion in the second? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? All right, ayes have it. Thank you. Madam Clerk, item 6, any miscellaneous business?
No, Mr. Chair.
Any other public comment?
No, Mr. Chair.
All right, committee adjourned.